And I'm live. I'm live. Nice. All right, folks. I do this every time. I know there's nobody in here with me, but I just can't sit here and stare at the screen waiting for someone to pop up. It just really looks crazy for you people that are watching this after the fact. Anyway, it is 2021. This is the very first episode of my second season. The only reason it's the second season is because I just decided to call it that shit. So this is second season of R-BoP, Riddick's Book of Philosophy. I have a very interesting and funny guest. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to wait till I actually have some people in here and I'm not jibber-jabbering to myself. And I will introduce her. What else to say? It's been an interesting day. It's been an interesting couple of days. Not going to get into it. Those of you that live on this planet happen to know what's going on around. I won't even say what happened in America. If you lived in the solar system of any creature that has a language, you know what happened. Hey, S&J, how you doing? Cooking with S&J, I have you. You're my first person to speak in season 2. Hi, Gene, I got you. Happy New Year to you, both of you guys. I have a great guest. Hey, Kent, how you doing? I knew you were going to be in here. Daddy Does Barbecue. I got 5 eyeballs. Hell, I think I got enough people to get this going. All right, guys, you know how this goes. All of this jibber-jabber that I'm doing beforehand is not going to make the actual podcast. You guys know once I do my my intro and bring in the guest, that's the part that's going to actually go to Google and Apple and everybody else. But hey, Jermel, how you doing, man? I got the I Often Wonder crew in here, I think, at least the head honcho. What's going on, man? Yeah, we got 9 folks in here, guys. I'm about to hit the record button right now, and I'm about to start the intro, and it goes a little something like this. I want to welcome you guys to R-BoP. This is Riddick's Book of Philosophy. My name's Philip Riddick, and this is where I talk about what I want to talk about the way I want to talk about it. If you enjoy this podcast, tell your friends, family, and loved ones to come in and enjoy my whimsical way of saying things, doing things, and thinking about things.
Please hold for a very important message.
Hey, everybody. Sooner or later, you're going to have to travel. You're going to have to take a plane, a hotel, or rent a car or something, either because you want to go on a vacation, something that you were waiting for or really wanted to do, or sometimes we have some unfortunate circumstances in our families where we have to travel involuntarily. Either way or the other, if you need to travel, you want to save some money. I am an independent TSA, Travel Savings Ambassador for iBoomerang. And I can save you 30 to 70% on your travel. If you send me your first and last name to the following email address, dcboomgetaways@gmail.com. Once again, dcboom, B-U-U-M, getaways@gmail.com. I can send you an absolutely free website, yours personally, that you can use whenever you want, and it will save you money. It can save your money whenever you are going away. You might be going away now. You might be going away in the future. This website is yours forever. So once again, if you want to save money traveling 30 to 70%, shoot your first and last name to me at dcboom, B-U-U-M, getaways@gmail.com. Welcome to R-BoP, folks. My name's Philip Riddick. I am the R in the R-BoP, guys. I'm the hostess with the mostest. I love that air horn. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, folks. The reason we are here is, one, this is the, like I said earlier, this is the first episode of my second season. All right. And I got a celebrity. This person's a celebrity. Got an IMDb page. You know you're a celebrity if you got IMDb. I only had one of those yet. I'll get there one day. All right. Anyway, this person is, one, she's very attractive. 2, she is a XM radio personality. All right. She also is the founder of Howl and Roar Records out of Canada. And y'all put your hands together for Allison Dore. Please do, please do. All right. How did I do with the intro?
It was great.
Shit.
Great. I mean, listen, the word celebrity, because I'm so low level, like I'm technically a public person, but at the same time, there's two things on that IMDb page. You know what I mean?
I know, but you got one. Look, if you're low level, you're still high enough so I can't see your butt. So I'm nothing if you're low. That's amazing. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much. How's your day been?
You know what? Actually, 2021 started off really great for me, and then today has been a bit of a nightmare.
Okay.
But you know what? Ending on a high note.
Nice. What's the high note?
I'm here talking to you.
I'm so glad you said that. All right, all right. Jamel, you know Jamel, he said, "What up, Allison?" He's speaking. All right. Well,
Jamel is the reason why we're connected.
Exactly. Those that don't know, Jamel Thomas invited me on, shameless plug, the I Often Wonder podcast. There you go, Jamel. That's for you. That's a freebie. The I Often Wonder podcast, and both myself and Allison were guests. And we had another person, but they had technical difficulties. But that was wasn't that Halloween, or was that? Yeah, that was a Halloween show.
A Halloween episode.
And that's when I first met Allison. And after we talked, we had a opportunity to come on and talk again. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love your energy, right?
Oh.
That's so. And so when you were like, you asked me if I'd come on, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. First of all, I love talking. So it's not that hard to get me to come on, but also, yeah, we had so much fun.
Yeah. And hey, you can come on anytime. Bring friends, shit. All right, we're gonna get into some of these questions. All right, we already talked about the formalities as far as the record label, which you can talk about all you want to, and your celebrity that you downplay so much. Who is Allison Dore? Where are you from? What's your background?
I am from Ottawa, which is the capital city of Canada. It's it's pretty boring. It's a very picturesque place, though. And so grew up there with my brother and my mom and dad.
Okay.
And, always wanted to be a performer.
Okay.
Since I was a little kid. And I always thought I would be an actor. And my joke is always, because when I was a teenager, I was positive that by the time I was 30, I would be an A-list celebrity in Hollywood.
Who didn't?
Yeah, spoiler alert, I'm not. I started out acting, and my brother actually got into comedy first.
Okay.
And he was the one that kept just pushing me to do it. And I didn't think I always said, like, I'm not funny like that. And he was like, no, there's only one kind of funny. Like, you're either funny or you're not. And after about 3 years, I finally decided to try it. And then I've been trapped ever since.
How did you start, though? Let's say me, a person with a lot of energy, according to Allison Dore. How would I get into comedy if I wanted to start?
Honestly, you just find an open mic near you, and you just pick a day and go, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. Yeah. And so when I did it, so back then in Ottawa, there was really only one place, and that was a club in the city. And when you first started, you were allowed to call in. There was a call-in day for spots on the open mic. And when you were brand new, you were only allowed one spot a month.
Okay.
And so eventually I just called in and got a date. And I was like, Kate, I'm doing it this day. And I tried to write jokes, but obviously in the beginning, you don't know how to write jokes.
Right.
It's a weird thing. And if you do, wow, you're lucky. You're steps ahead. And I ended up the day of basically changing my mind about everything I was going to talk about. And I went to a diner with my best friend and just was like, is this anything? And then that night went up on stage and said it.
So you didn't practice it, or you just laid it on your friend and then just went cold?
Yeah, I didn't practice it.
Oh, shit.
It's really hard to, like, and even when you practice it in front of one person or even by yourself, like it can, especially when you've never done it before.
Yeah. You got nothing to gauge.
yeah, it's nothing. You don't know what's happening. And so that night when I got there, I was so terrified.
Okay.
And my brother's girlfriend at the time, who was also, she is still a comedian. I said to her, I go, I don't think I can do it. I can't do it. It's too scary. And she had to hold my hand and walk me up to the stage because I was like, I don't want to go. And then it went okay. And I think if it hadn't gone okay that first time, that would have been it.
Okay, so that would have broke your spirit. If you would have bombed, you would have said bump it.
Because I'll tell you this, bombing feels so bad. And you eventually get used to it, and you do get to the point where it kind of rolls off and you go, oh, that was a bad show. Ooh. But in the beginning, it hurts so bad. And so if I had bombed that night, I don't think I ever would have gone back.
Well, I'm glad you kicked it in its ass, because I'm glad to see it. I'm glad you kicked it in its ass.
And without comedy, I don't know where my road would have gone. You know what I mean? I don't know if everything that I do now, I can kind of trace the roots to the experiences and the things I learned in stand-up in a lot of ways. So,
nice.
Lucky for all of us.
Yeah, I know, right? Family. Next question, family. You talked about parents, brother. What about you? Spouse, kids, pets, dogs, what?
No spouse. Chili the corgi is my beloved dog and my constant companion.
All right.
And I'll often say when I'm talking about my life, I'll be like, oh, we went here or we went there. And my friends will be like, when did you start dating someone? And I'm like, no, Chili. Like when I say we, it's always me and my dog. It's never anyone else. It's just the two of us against the world. Against the world.
Yeah. That's amazing. We talked about what you do for a living, so we kind of jumped ahead on that one. But how can I spin the question? We talked about what you do. We kind of talked about how you started. What prompted it? What was it? Just a gut thing? I'm gonna be a comedian, or did you follow someone's footsteps, or what?
It was honestly my brother's encouragement. Like I've always loved comedy, and now, like once I became a comedian, it was so obvious to see what my influences were and the comedians, because our dad always watched a lot of comedy and would show us a lot of stuff. So I grew up, there's a show called SCTV, and it was in Canada, but it was like insanely popular. And that's what gave us Eugene Levy, Martin Short, John Candy.
Yeah, I remember SCTV.
Yeah. Okay. So, it was a bit before my time, but my dad had like all these VHS tapes. With,
young people, that is a square plastic thing that you put into a machine and it runs a tape, but you could still watch it. We don't want to alienate anybody. You were saying?
Good point. We're on the internets right now, and the kids might not know. And so I watched so much of that. We had a tape of Bill Cosby himself, the stand-up special. We had, also, like, I remember watching a lot of comedy that I was way too young for.
Okay.
But either our parents like let it go, or like once I was about 7 when my babysitter showed me Eddie Murphy Delirious.
It's funny you say that. Me and my brother, my parents had a raggedy ass freaking record player. I'm talking about, 45, 30. Young people, records are these flat vinyl discs that you can record on and listen to with a needle. Look in the Smithsonian, you'll see one. Anyway, we used to listen to Red Fox and Richard Pryor. I thought we were young, and we turned it down so low because they were cussing, hey, boy, blah, blah. And so I know exactly what you're saying. But anyway, back to your point.
Well, so, I mean, now I can kind of see how all of the imprint was there for me to do it. But I never thought, I always thought I would be like a serious actor. And then once I started doing comedy, like comedy is a drug, right? And it's also like the mafia. It's like once you're really in, you can never leave.
Really?
It's so hard. Your identity gets wrapped up in it. And like now, I actually quit performing a couple of years ago. And part of that is how the record label got born, because it's after 17 years of doing stand-up, if I'm not a comedian, I don't know who I am anymore.
That makes sense.
And so it was one of those things where it's like I have to be in the community. Like this is how I identify. This
Right.
who and then a whole bunch of other things kind of all fell together. And one day I was like, oh, I think I'm starting a comedy record label. And then I did. So it becomes part of your DNA almost.
I can understand that.
If you're in it long enough, and so, and the other thing is you have control as a comedian.
Okay.
Or especially if you live in a big city.
All right.
During non-pandemic times.
Back when the air wouldn't kill you. Yes.
You could, any night of the week, you could find an open mic. You can go up. You control what you're going to say. You control how you're going to say it. You control. Whereas as an actor, it's like you're dependent on so many other people and so many things.
Oh, you got to read the script. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a million things.
Yeah.
And so stand-up started taking over more and more of my performance life because it's just accessible. It's there all the time.
Nice.
Yeah. And then it just gets in your blood and you're like, this is what I do now.
Well, I mean, I can relate, but same thing, but different. 23 years military. So now that I'm retired, I still think the same way, man. Y'all civilians make me sick. But, you think a certain way. Yeah. And I could see doing 17 years of the same thing, being a comedian, same thing. There's a certain way of doing things, seeing things, outlook, and the community. And I can see that. See that.
It is, I mean, obviously very different roles, but very similar. Because you never lose that military mindset, right?
You never.
And that walk.
Yeah. Now, social media. This is your time to shine. You can put it out there. Anything that you want to plug, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, books, records, people, this is your time to shine. What you got?
Okay, I love it. Let's start with the record label. Okay. So Howl and Roar is on Instagram and on Twitter. It's at Howl_Roar. And so we're a comedy record label. We're female centric, which means that 70% of our focus is on women in the industry. Mm-hmm. In the remaining 30%, priority is given to men in the LGBTQ plus community or men of color. Okay. Because what I always tell people is like essentially every other record label is for straight white dudes.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I'm, adverse to working with them. It's just that they have so many places to go. And so our focus is about the other voices because even it's challenging for me even. And if you go online and you Google comedy or whatever, like the first 100 names half the time are going to be white men, straight white men. And listen, great comics in that group. Mm-hmm. But so our goal is just amplifying other voices because a lot of the times people go, I've seen some comedy and I didn't like it, or it wasn't for me. And there is some type of comedy for everyone. And so this is just about letting people know what is out there. And also this, Phil, as someone who loves interviewing and conversation, is that when you get to hear from other people, you get this, it expands your vision of the world.
As long as your mind's not closed. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And listen, you go up against that a lot of the time when you get on stage with a microphone.
Yeah.
But you also, you win some people over and you find your place. And that's why there's been a real movement in the last few years to create different kinds of comedy venues and different kinds of shows.
Okay.
And a lot of comics rail against this, because it's safe space comedy. And they're like, comedy's not supposed to be safe. And what they don't understand is the safe space is not for the comedian. It's for the audience.
For the audience, exactly. I was going to ask this question. It came to my mind. I'm glad you brought it up. When it comes to how to word it, the way everybody's feelings are hurt nowadays, all this, all the politically correct, blah, 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 which has nothing to do with comedy. Comedy should be freaking totally unleashed. You could talk about everything from a person's eyeball to their butthole. and it's either going to be funny or it's not.
Talk about my
But
butthole a lot.
but have you? I did see that thing. I looked you up. Obviously, I did, and you did a stand-up thing on your thong. It was hilarious about the thong. But anyway,
that happened in the moment because when I was recording, I was like, "Oh, this is a nightmare." It was right up there.
Anyway, but have you been in areas, or I don't know how Canada's broken up. United States, you got the yeehaw people, and then you got the gangbangers up north.
We got those people, yep.
Do you got places where there's so much of a stigma, or you got sticks up their asses so far that you got to be careful about what you say? Do you run into that any?
So, look, it's not so much that you have to be careful what you say, but there are absolutely places where if you're a woman or a comic of color,
right,
you have to be a little bit more careful, and you also have to go in with a bit of a thicker skin.
Oh, well, even in America, look, I can't just drop a nigga joke anyway. Yeah, I said it. You just can't do that in some places. And then, it's like a black guy can tell the NIGGA joke. A Jewish guy talks about Jews. That's safe space. Now, when you get a black guy telling a Jew joke, now, you
Sure.
that type of thing. You run into that?
I mean, I don't personally run into that because it's not in my comedy is storytelling mostly and personal experiences, right?
Okay, right.
There are absolutely those comics. I don't know, but the thing is, what comics never think about it about like, well, when I go to this place, they don't like that. Like, you'll tailor your set a little bit to kind of what the audience reaction is,
right? But
the people who kind of do that kind of comedy do it regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's they're like, it's either going to work or it's not most of the time. And so there is some level of adjustment. Like sometimes if you're watching the comic ahead of you, you're like, oh, this audience, doesn't love swearing. Maybe I'm going to tone it down a bit, or this audience. But you don't ever completely change your act and go,
well, you can't. You'd be screwed. You can't change everything.
You can't change everything. So I don't know that there's ever been places that you kind of go, well, I can't say this here, because I think if you have that thought, it's something that you're probably then not going to say anywhere, right? Because
you're struggling. Yeah, you're struggling with the subject matter as opposed to the funny.
Yes, and so the goal is, and what ends up happening is, as you work out a joke, you're finding the way to say it that appeals to the most people.
Gotcha.
Right? Because the bottom line is, as a comedian, if most of the audience is on your side, then forget the people who aren't.
Yeah, you're good.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's only when you get into like really, edgy subjects,
right,
that it's, you better have written a well-crafted joke.
Yeah. Or be able to,
the audience will turn on you.
Gotcha.
And also it's one of those things where, yes, people right now do get offended a lot, or I don't know if it's a lot or they just feel more comfortable voicing it now. And so the trick is, if you're going to say that joke, you better really believe in it and be able to stand your ground. But
be able to back it up with some more funny.
Yeah. And the worst, it's like, if you don't really believe in that joke, then just drop it. Why did you say it in the first place? Because you have to be able to stand your ground as a comedian. Now, that's not to say that if you do say the wrong thing, or you go too far, that you shouldn't apologize.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it's like, you have to.
I would think you'd be able to joke it off. If you get that no reaction, then you just kind of joke it off and move on. Yeah,
that's the best way to do it.
I would think you could. Now, you talk about a record label.
Yes.
What else you got? Insta, Facebook, what else?
Oh, yeah. So the
I'm going to bring you back on subject, trust me.
Because I will drift. The record label also is howlroarrecords.com. And so all our albums are there. And I hope people will check them out. And actually, one of our albums just won the Interrobang, is a comedy website in the US. It's a huge resource for all things comedy. And for the last 7 years, they've done their comedy awards where people vote for the best of the year. And Bonnie McFarlane's album that we produced won album of the year for 2020.
Oh shit! Hey, hands together for that. Yeah.
So that album is called Bird Calls by Bonnie McFarlane. So I highly recommend that one. And then in terms of socials, like I'm real hit or miss.
Okay.
I go through like I binge tweet. So it's like sometimes I'll go through a phase where I'm tweeting all the time and then I won't tweet for a week.
I've never tweeted. I've never had a Twitter. I'm going to get one now. We talked about why, but we won't talk about it now.
Well, yeah, I mean, but also it's a double, like Twitter is a blessing and a curse because sometimes it's the funniest, best place on the internet. And sometimes you're like, I hate this place. I want to burn it down. So you just gotta be careful with it. But so you can find me on Twitter at Allison Dore, ALLISONDORE. And you can find me on Instagram at Allison.Dore. And it's, it's a real hodgepodge of crap.
I got you. Everybody listening, all of those links are either, if you're on YouTube, it's going to be in the description box. And if you're on the podcast, it's going to be in the show notes. So you can get those handles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
easy money.
Social. And then, I mean, those are my big places for social media is Twitter and Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time.
Nice. All right. Well, look, all of that was just the intro. We haven't even talked about the subject yet. Ain't that some shit? See, I did the same thing to my last guest, not gonna call his name, and he started talking blah blah blah. And I said, all right, now we're gonna take a break. I'm gonna do my Instagram thing, and then my Instacart thing, and then we're gonna talk about the subject. He's like, oh man, we ain't even talking about the subject yet. No, we're not.
Not into it yet.
But everybody, I'm getting ready to get the bills paid. I gotta do my ad real quick fast, and I will be back with Allison Dore. You guys hold on to your butts. We will be right back. I would like to talk to you about Instacart. What if I told you that you could have local fresh groceries delivered to your front door? You can have multiple deliveries for one small monthly fee. Unlike some other apps or services that want to nickel and dime you all the time. If you don't have that special item that you need to make a special recipe, Instacart in some cases can get that to your house in as fast as 1 hour. Hand selected by shoppers based on your preferences, Instacart highlights deals that can help save you money. You can find everything you normally buy, and they also suggest things that may be new to you. They pick the freshest produce and also keep your eggs safe too. Follow the link in the show notes that lets Instacart know that I sent you. That will not only help the show, but it will also, in this case, give you free delivery on your first order over $35. Instacart. Never go out to go grocery shopping again. We are back. I am with Allison Dore, and she just showed our guest, Grogu.
Grogu's here, guys.
Huh?
I said Grogu's here, guys.
Grogu's here, guys. For those of you that is not Baby Yoda, although he will answer to that, his name is Grogu.
I put him back behind the wall because I thought he'd be too distracting in the background.
Oh, no. We're family here. If we're not cussing, we're learning how to cuss. Anyway, all right, here is the subject. I brought in Allison because she is a comedian, and what I really want to talk to her about is what wasn't funny in 2020. 2020 fucking sucked. 2020 was terrible. What was not funny in 2020?
You know, a shorter list is what was funny in 2020. Because almost nothing. Almost nothing. What a heartbreaker of a year.
I know.
On every level. Like there was no level that didn't suck.
I agree.
And I have COVID privilege, right?
What is that? What's COVID privilege?
It's the new thing that's going around. It's essentially like I have worked this whole time. My job transitioned me. So I host a daily talk show on Sirius XM, and I also do a weekly show for one of the comedy channels. And they immediately transitioned us to working from home. I broadcast from this very spot every day. And so money has not been an additional worry to every other nightmare on the landscape of 2020 for me.
And that's a blessing.
It's a huge blessing, right? Yeah. And that there's been so many things that I have felt lucky for in amidst, trying to deal with all these things. So essentially it's like COVID privilege means I'm not affected the same way so many other people are.
That's
right?
True.
So many people that lost their jobs, so many people that have to go to work in a store and kind of put themselves on the line and then have people come in and yell at them about masks and,
Look, grocery store people are risking it. You know what I'm saying? They're risking it. That sucked in 2020 anyway.
Yeah. And so it's the year was incredibly challenging for all of us, but less challenging for me in some areas, which I feel really, really lucky about. But it's like when you think about it too, so January started off the wildfires in Australia and it was like, oh man, great. The whole world is burning to the ground and global warming or whatever. And then we quickly transition into, global pandemic. This is a nightmare. And then George Floyd. And then the resurgence of, white supremacy coming out into the surface.
In 2020, I couldn't believe it.
Right? And then anti-Semitism is back. And it's like all this stuff is coming to the forefront, which in a way is good.
It is. Because, and I agree with you why it's good. Because us black folks we're already looking for it. Now we don't even have to look. It's just there now. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Not everywhere, but the hot spots, it's just, you don't even have to hide from white supremacy anymore. You look, that's one shot. You're right.
Well, and last year I remember getting into an argument with a guy on air because he was like, I don't really think racism is a big issue or white supremacy exists anymore. And I was like, what are you talking about? And so people like that who hadn't experienced it, hadn't seen it, therefore didn't believe it existed. Now you cannot not know about it now.
But you got people that still deny it. They're still denying it. And they're killing me.
But we can't get to those people. Yeah. If the majority is not acknowledging.
Oh yeah. Some people you're just never going to reach.
No.
Out of the chat, you got MA says Kobe. Kobe
right.
Bryant.
So
and then Kent, he says, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to ignore the chat too. Daddy Dutch Kent says his daughter started working at a local grocery store 15 months ago. It worries him a lot too. So yeah.
Of course. And I guarantee she's not getting paid enough.
Nobody is.
And angry people or people that are unhappy seem to, and I've worked every job in the world, and angry and unhappy people seem to think that, if you work in that grocery store, if you work in a restaurant, if you, whatever service industry you're in, they're allowed to take out their aggression on you. Because you're in a position where if you don't want to get fired, you got to just stand there and take it. And that's the worst.
I'll tell you, the worst I felt for a person. I travel a lot. I work in the Middle East. I travel a whole lot. But anyway, when you lose a bag in the airport, the unfortunate so-and-so that has to fill out the thing, can you describe your bag? It was a black bag. Well, shit.
Yeah.
But then they get berated because a person's been flying for anywhere from 2 to 12 hours. They're tired. They're uncomfortable. But they feel like it's okay to chew this person out who didn't have shit to do with the bag in the first place.
And is literally trying to do what they can. They're not getting enough support from the people above them.
No.
They're not getting, and so they're literally like, I am doing everything I can do.
Yeah.
I can't make your bag appear.
That person they didn't load the bag. They didn't tag the bag. They didn't unload the bag. They were just standing there. And I felt so bad for this one lady, not older. Well, she was older at the time. And after this lady was, and this lady just had this look like, I'm just done with humanity. She had that look on her face, and I'm next. And as soon as that lady walked, hell, I wanted to whoop her ass just because she was treating the other lady like crap.
Yeah.
And I walked up and I said, I'm sorry. How's your day been? You didn't deserve that. And she just she was like, oh, thank you, God, there's a human being here, someone with compassion, right? And I was as nice as I could be, and she didn't have nothing to do with my bag, blah, blah, blah. I thanked her, and I think she perked up, and I hopefully that helped the rest of her day. But I don't want to say hate. I dislike people that forget that they're not better than other people. I freaking hate it. I hate it.
Listen, we are on the same page.
Yeah.
It's, and you know what, I think if everyone had to work certain jobs growing up and to learn that, because some people never have and they don't know how hard it is.
True.
The other thing is, so many people operate in this world that their self-esteem comes from thinking they're better than other people.
Yeah.
And so in situations, they will make other people feel bad. And it makes me insane. And there's even more of that this year. And so that gentleman that was talking about his daughter, she's not only dealing with just the average everyday assholes that come in and do it all the damn time.
Right.
Now she's dealing with every person who's mad at the government, every person who has bought into the idea like this isn't a real thing, every person who thinks that putting a mask on is somehow infringing on their freedom.
Yeah.
Right. And she has to deal with the brunt of all of that and do her job and not get fired and worry that she might get exposed. And like, it's insane.
All that shit, and you still got to make sure you give them correct change.
Oh, yeah.
That's bull crap.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
What major obstacles did you have to overcome? Funny or not funny? Anything major did you have to overcome in 2020?
You know what, for me, and I talk about this a lot, mental health, which is pretty good for me now, but historically speaking, not good at all. So I have lifelong clinical depression and generalized anxiety disorder.
Okay.
And you know what, like I'm in a pretty steady flow over the past few years, but depression is, you know, that fun thing that can kind of rear up out of nowhere and things like that. But the more sort of stress that comes into it, and then obviously, especially in the beginning of 2020, when we didn't know what this was, we didn't know how we were going to deal with it, and isolating, you know, I live alone, and chili saved my brain in a million different ways. Dogs are, well, pets in general are incredible that way. So, you know, one of my biggest obstacles this year has really been struggling with that same demon.
Okay.
Because it was very challenging for me in that sense. And I felt more unsteady than I had in a very long time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But that's, you know what? Thank you. But also that's okay, right? Depression is, and mental illness is sort of can be, or form in my experience is sort of like a wave you ride, right?
Okay.
And when you first experience it and you're first dealing with it, it's the wave is crashing over you and you feel like you're going to drown and you're trying to claw to the surface. And the more you live with that experience and the more you kind of go through it, you learn how to ride the wave. You learn how to ride the wave.
Now, I don't know if I have it. You get that. It happens to me on planes sometimes. You know, chest gets kind of tight, and you know, you start feeling uneasy because I'm like, you know, it happens. All right, it's just weird to me sometimes. Heart starts beating a little bit fast, and I just, you know, grab some scotch and breathe through it. Now, I don't know if it's that easy for anybody else. You know, my wife, every now and then she complains, oh, I pulled over, I drank some water, had to calm down, or, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know if that's anxiety. Well, for me, is that anxiety, or do I just get to altitude and my feet swell and I want some scotch? I don't know. You know, it's never been an issue for me. It's just like, I'm getting that funky feeling again. It's going to last for about 10 minutes. Yeah, can I get some scotch? And then I'm done with it, you know.
Yeah.
I think part of it might be how people react to it. I've been into so many uncomfortable, crazy, and dangerous situations in the past life. You know, I've been to war 4 times. If I can't handle a little bit of anxiety, there's something wrong with me. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
so people look at it differently.
Well, I think you have a different constitution, right? Like,
Okay.
and because yes, people, I can't go to war, not just because it's
We'll
not,
kill you.
but because I am not my mental makeup,
Right.
I would not survive it, right?
Okay. All right.
And so that's the other thing, is that people are all wired differently.
This is true.
And so your brain works in a way that the anxiety you experience, and it's all on a spectrum, and you're probably on the lower end of the spectrum, you deal with it better. And that's going to be a combination of how your brain works and how you were raised and the experiences you've had in life. And so there's something about the way your brain is wired that you have that kind of a stronger constitution. It also, not everyone, I'm sure in training in the military, there were some people that you were like, yeah, see, this guy just has to go. He can't do it. Right.
That's happened. Yeah.
And so we're all different.
Yeah.
And so it's the level of anxiety is different for some people. And so it sounds like maybe your wife experiences anxiety at a bit of a higher level than you do, right?
I believe she does. Yeah.
I got to pull over. I got to take a breath. And then for other people, like, it builds higher and higher and higher. And so it's one of those things where we have to remember that even though we're all human beings, and so yeah, we're all equal, we all bleed the same blood, we all operate completely differently. Yeah. And so one of the things with anxiety, depression is that a lot of people who have never experienced it, they can't imagine it, which is
See, I struggle with understanding the depression. I've never been to, and please don't take this the wrong way, I've never dealt with depression, so it's hard for me to understand, well, feel better. That's what the first thing I want to say is, then feel better. Because I don't understand it, nor have I ever been through it. And I'm glad it's funny we're talking about mental health in a in a podcast. I didn't think it was going to go that way, but I'm glad we did, because this could help a lot of people.
I will take it that way every chance I get.
Exactly.
Because it is really important.
Yeah.
And because the thing is, yes, the reaction a lot of people have is, well, why can't you just feel better? Like, why don't you just, well, you just got to pick yourself up. You just got to go do something and you'll feel better.
Right.
And if it were that easy,
everybody would do it.
I would just get up and go, oh, look, you're right. I moved around. I feel better. And so I had a nervous breakdown when I was 23.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And no, it's best thing that ever happened to me.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of stuff wrong, both inside me, but also the way I was interacting with things, the way I was dealing with things. But what that meant was I literally couldn't function. I could not. I had to quit my job. If I hadn't quit, I probably would have gotten fired anyway. I could not work. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't get dressed. And I had to move back in with my parents. And my mom basically had to, every couple of days go, you have to get in the shower. Because I just couldn't take care of myself. I wouldn't brush my teeth. I wouldn't shower. I wouldn't change out. I was in the same dirty pajamas forever. And the idea of taking a shower was so monumental. It was something where you go, but it's impossible. All I can do is lie here.
Wow.
And it's not a choice. Like, if I could just get up and be better, nobody, especially in their early 20s, wants to live in the spare room at their parents' house and be in pajamas all the time.
My mother had a nervous breakdown. I was young. I didn't understand it. I was told it was a nervous breakdown. I'm like, how do you break your nerves? I didn't know. But she wasn't functioning for a while. She recovered. But, you shed some light on it for me now.
Well, and it's something, it's also, it's hard for me to explain to you, because, like, why couldn't I get up? I don't know. I don't know either. And that's the scariest part, is that when you're going through it, you go, what if I never get better?
Wow.
What if I never feel good again? What if I never feel, it's the only time I felt true hopelessness. And you don't, I don't think you really know what hopelessness is until you're in it, where you literally go, I was like, do I kill myself? Because if this is going to be the rest of my life, I cannot do this.
Right.
And you just can't imagine it ever getting better, because you can't even get yourself out of bed. How do you make this better? And luckily, I mean, I was in a very lucky position. I had a really great therapist. And time does work wonders.
Nice. Yeah.
And I also had parents who they had no idea what to do or what to say.
Right.
But they were there. They met with my therapist too, and were like, you know, our instinct is to tell her to get up and get out of bed and do this. Is that right? Is that wrong? What should we do? And they got some guidance on that. And we kind of created a set of boundaries in terms of like, I'm going to do my best to get up at these times. And but if I really can't, like, they need to be there. And so it was really a struggle for them too.
Wow. Yeah.
You don't want to see your kid being a devastated nightmare.
Look, I got 4 daughters and I wouldn't want any of them to do that.
Yeah.
I understand.
And so they were like, okay, we're going to be supportive. We're going to do what we can do. We're going to try to figure out how to help you.
Yes.
And eventually about, a few months later, I was getting a little bit better. I got to the point where I got a part-time job again, and you just keep kind of building
on it. Yep.
And then also you keep kind of looking for the tools that work for you.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've been on medication since I was 20.
Okay.
Medication is not for everybody, but for some people like me, it helps me be a functional member of society.
Girl, I'm on medication too. Look.
Yes, you are. And thank you for acknowledging.
There you go. It helps me function too. Listen, any chemical that is freaking introduced to the body is going to have some type of effect and side effect. It doesn't matter. If you drink a lot of water, you're going to pee. All right. You drink a lot of coffee, you're going to freaking be jittery and stuff. You take a lot of medication. That's just a fact. Anything you put in the body is going to be an effect and a side effect. All right. It doesn't matter if it's medication.
Yes.
All right. The end result is, how are you after that? Let's go with that. And we're going to move on to the next question. This was great. This is gold right here. I was not expecting us to go into this kind of conversation, but I'm so glad we did. And anybody, if you're out there and if you are having any type of mental health issues, find some help. You're not by yourself. I wish I had the 1-800 number on the screen. I wish I did, but I didn't. I wasn't prepared for this conversation. But folks, you're not by yourself. You got friends, you got loved ones, you got support. Reach out if you can. And
can I just add to that?
Sure.
There are so many different types of therapy, so many different exercises you can do. There are podcasts, there are books, it doesn't have to be a traditional route necessarily, but if you suspect, because often we don't want to admit it to ourselves, you suspect there's something going on with you. If you're not happy, just start getting curious about, look up different subject, go into wherever you download podcasts and kind of put a few words in and start looking up, because there are so many more resources out there than you realize, and help can come from anywhere.
Yes, it can.
And it just depends on what speaks to you, and what works for one person might not necessarily work for someone else. So you just got to get curious about all the different things that people do and start seeing what works for you and put that into your rotation.
I second it.
Because you can feel better.
I second it. Whatever you do, don't go to WebMD and start looking up symptoms, because you're going to think you're going to freaking die. Don't do that. Don't do that. Every time I go to WebMD just to look, it's always cancer. Just don't look.
Yeah.
All right. Dealing with, actually, this is pretty good. The question was, have you ever had to deal with outsiders, have to deal with scrutiny in the comedy thing? Anyone telling you ain't good enough, you ain't going to make it, you can't do it, stop.
Always.
Really? How do you deal with that?
Always. Well, here's the thing. If you want to do something, if there's something you want to achieve, and it doesn't matter what it is, it can be comedy, it can be life, it can be, you could come from a family of doctors and want to be an accountant. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There are always going to be people who tell you it's a bad idea and you can't do it.
This is true.
Always, always.
This is true.
And especially if it's something like comedy is subjective. People think that something's either funny or it's not.
Yeah.
Well, no. It's, the example I always use is Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah.
I don't think Larry the Cable Guy is funny, but I cannot say that he's not.
He's funny.
He is so rich and
Yeah.
sells out stadiums putting on that costume.
The same fucking cover. I didn't mean to cuss. The same freaking coveralls, man.
Yeah, his real name is Dave. Is it? I can't remember. Larry is definitely not his name, but I can't remember if it's Dave or not. Anyway, but so here's the thing. If I go, well, that's not funny. That's not true either, right? And so when people would say to me, I don't think you're funny. The other thing that's was challenging for me is that my brother is a genius comedian. Mm. My brother is also, and was, especially when I moved to Toronto, more famous than me, funnier than me, more well-known than me. And so people always wanted to be like, you're not as funny as your brother.
Okay.
Your brother's the funny one. And the merciful thing about that is my brother is my biggest fan and no one thinks I'm my brother.
There you go.
If you said that to my brother, he'd go, you're crazy. Yeah. But if you listen to the people who tell you you can't, it's a tragedy. Yeah. You know, like I don't want to get too airy-fairy about it, but it's like that expression, whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Exactly.
And so sometimes when people would discourage me, and there's a couple of reasons. One, when you say you want to go into entertainment, a lot of people can't fathom that.
Okay.
And so they go, well, it's really hard. Well, I don't know. It's probably not going to work out. You better have a backup. And fair enough, say what you're going to say, but just, you have to let that roll off you because it is hard, but if you want it, there's a way to cobble out a living.
My next question would be, how do you know you didn't do it?
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry. I forgot about your stellar.
Exactly. I didn't see your Grammy. Get the hell out of here.
But the other thing is, and this is what I've realized a lot, and this is one of the biggest challenges we all face in life. If there is someone in your life who is not happy, but is doing what they think they're supposed to do, and so on some level people are like, I'm not happy, but this is what I have to do. If you start chasing the things that you want in your dreams, subconsciously to them, that's a threat. And so sometimes people are going to say to you, no, you're not good at that. I don't think you should do it. It's too risky. Don't do it. Because that's what they're telling themselves all the time.
See, I agree with that. My daughter, I'm going into me again. My daughter is starting culinary school, my youngest daughter. Funny. I got a cooking channel, but she's like, Dad, I've been going to school for this. I'm just changing everything. I'm going to culinary school, blah, blah, blah. And I got no problem with it because I got benefits and I ain't got to pay for it. But anyway, but she's like, Dad, I want to make myself happy. I want to do this. And my wife prepped me with it first. And then she just came and told me. And I was like, all right, that's it. All right. Do you think? Let me know how it works out if you have any issues now. But all right, so that's where we are. I'm not one to crush a dream. You know, now I want to try to monitor to hope she's going to be successful, but I can't tell her, I mean, I could, but then I'm a dick. It's a difference between being a supportive father and just being that guy saying, do what I want you to do. Now you're a dick. You're not a dad anymore.
Well, also, at least try, right?
Yeah.
She's going to do this and then she's going to go into a restaurant for a year and it's going to turn out not to be her thing.
Well, she says she wants to start a bakery. I'm like, free bread, shit, do it. I don't.
Awesome, right?
All right.
But all of life is, for every person, is trial and error.
Yeah.
And so if you have a big dream, like people go, well, what do you think? You're going to be the next Brad Pitt. Well, how do you think Brad Pitt got to be Brad Pitt?
Not being Brad Pitt. He wasn't trying to be somebody else. He's trying to be himself. He got that.
And he drove to Hollywood and lived in his car for a while and kept going to auditions and he tried. And there were definitely people in his life that said, it's really hard and you shouldn't do it. And why would you think you can? And listen, the difference between the people who make it and the people who don't is the people who make it just kept trying.
Yeah.
And so it's one thing if you try for a long time and then go, you know what? I've realized this isn't right for me anymore. I've grown up a bit, or my life has changed. My priorities have changed.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this aside.
Yeah.
But if you listen to the people in your life who want to keep you down,
yeah,
and you never try, you're going to get to your deathbed and go, why? Why didn't I even try?
I didn't do anything. Misery loves company. People say that all the time. Misery loves company. All right. One more question, and I'm going to do a plug for a friend. I ain't even getting paid for it. I'm going to do it because he asked me to. Okay. Anyway, have you ever done or said something out of anger or out of character in front of a crowd? You ever said, oh, shit, I shouldn't have done it? Have you ever just, pow, just flat out threw something out there that you were like, this was a mistake?
I mean, I've definitely thrown stuff out there that was a mistake before, but yeah. I don't think I've ever done it out of anger.
Okay. Or out of character, you know, something that's like, I normally don't do this. Why did I do it? You know, something like that.
Oh, I mean, the first thing I think about when you say that is celebrities who get caught saying words they're not supposed to say. Like PMG.
Wasn't it Kramer? The guy who played
Well, my friend was on that show.
Who what?
And no, that has never happened. Because here's the thing. When something like that happens and people go, that was out of character for me, it's like, but it couldn't have been because you said it. So
yeah,
there are words I have never said in my life, and they're not going to come out of my mouth when I'm angry on stage. The only kind of thing that I might say I regret is like ripping a little too hard into a heckler.
Okay, all right.
But that's going to be like, okay, well, we all know you have a small dick. Don't worry about it. That's never going to be. I've never said a racial slur in my life. It's not coming out of my mouth on stage. There's no way to happen, right? It's just, but it also, just to be on the celebrities saying bad things theme, it's like the same thing with Mel Gibson, who's like, no, I only said all those things because I was drunk.
Yeah.
Whoa, I have been drunk and angry many times. I have never been anti-Semitic. I have never been racist. And I've also never said wished violence upon one of my exes in the way that he did.
Oh, wish violence? Have I? I've done that. Anyway.
Oh, no, like I said,
I'm just kidding.
But he was very graphic and specific about it. And,
yeah, I know.
So that's like, it bugs me when people go, well, I was angry. And it's okay, but you didn't pull a word out of your vocabulary that you've never used before.
Right.
So yeah, no, that's definitely never. I definitely have talked about guys' small dicks on stage, but I've never.
Smooth move, dickless. That's funny. All right, we're gonna take one more break. This is the last ad. It's not really an ad. A friend of mine. If you don't have friends, you don't have anything. All right. So a friend of mine asked me if I would help him plug his thing. So it's, guys, if you're interested in some cool posters or some collectibles, that's what this is about. And it's going to go a little something like this. Here you go. If you want to gussy up a man cave or any room in a house or office, go to coolwalls.co.uk. They are Adam and Christian, aka DJ Barbecue, two friends that share the same creative quirks. They have been collecting and geeking out on movies, music, and cool stuff for years. Now they're able to bring you some authentic gems that will transform your walls into cool walls. For vintage, nostalgic, collectible imagery, go to www.coolwalls.co.uk. You can be a cool cat with a cool wall. All right, y'all. Put your hands together for being a cool cat with a cool wall. I literally made that today, just because a friend of mine, once again, the guy asked me would I plug his stuff. So guys, if you want to, these posters and things like that are they're the actual posters from like movies, you know, like Moonraker or Godzilla, blah, blah, blah. And they're vintage, and you can go to that site. You know, you can get the Star Wars poster, the movie poster, the one outside the movie theater. That's the stuff we're talking about, guys. So if you want something cool like that to put on your wall, or office, man cave, or whatever, the link will be in the show notes or in the description box, guys. And it's help out a friend of mine named Christian Stevenson, DJ Barbecue. And there you go, guys. Support him. He needs the help, and I promised him I would push this. Now, back to Allison. Back to Allison. Next question. What drives you? What pushes you? What makes Allison the great Allison? The great Mrs. Dore.
Thank you. Ms. Dore.
Ms. Dore. I'm sorry. Ms. Dore.
I am not the marrying type. That's a great question. I think I always want to be better.
Nice.
And so it's, whether that's in work, I'm not competitive with other people. I don't look at, whether it's radio or in the record business, because there's a lot of comedy record labels, surprisingly enough. I don't look and go, well, they got that person. Why don't I have that person? Or they're getting this many listeners, or they're in this. Why don't I have that? I'm never competitive in that way. I'm competitive with myself. So it's, what am I doing as an interviewer, as a host, as a producer, for the label? How can I be better? What's the next step? How do we grow? How do I, and then in my personal life all the time. So I am probably the biggest influence in my life in a way, in terms of when I really sit down to think about these things.
So you're self-motivating.
Yeah. Like the person that I often look to as an example is Maya Angelou.
Okay.
Who obviously I've never met, but iconic, right? And her whole thing was always, she would raise the bar for herself first. She would live up to that. And then she would start expecting that of other people. And in this life, what we see all the time, and we sat on Wednesday, is people who expect to be treated a certain way. They do not treat other people that way. And so they hold other people to a higher standard than they hold themselves.
Right.
And if you don't treat them to this high standard, they flip out. But when other people are treated to a low standard, they're fine with it.
They don't care. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, one of the biggest things is like leading by example. And everybody leads in the sense that the way we carry ourselves when we interact in situations, we're showing people how we interact in the world.
Right.
And so my thing is, I always want to be better. I always want to be, how can I be a better person? If my life were a movie, how do I journey into being the hero of this movie?
Wow.
And so that's what always kind of motivates me is, okay, where am I at? What are the things that I should be happy about that I'm like, okay, I'm achieving, I've worked on this, I feel good about this, but then where are the areas where I go, okay,
I can get better.
Yeah, I don't love that I did that, or that was the outcome, or that this, what do I work on there? Because we're the only things that we can change and control, right?
Yeah.
And so it's always about, like, I truly think the meaning of life, I think that it's something that we all have to sort of decide for ourselves, what we
right.
We're here. And for me, I think it's the goal is to become the best person you can possibly be while you're living this life. Because I think you only one life.
That's great. I'm completely different. I'm completely different. I'm competitive because I don't like people to be better than me.
Right.
My idea, I don't like people to be better than me.
Sure.
But I do not sit back and be like, what can I do to be a better person? Because sometimes I'm an asshole and I'm okay with that. You know what I'm saying?
Don't get me wrong. I am an asshole sometimes.
Yeah.
But I would like to be an asshole less.
Oh, I would like to. I would like to be less, but I mean, I'm 50-something years old. All right, I'm over half a century. I'm kind of setting some stuff. I'm working on it. All this. My wife fell up. I know I screwed up. I got to work on it. Mm-hmm. But now back to making things better, wanting to improve. And I know I'm not the only one. I know you can appreciate this one. Getting an argument or a conversation, and on the way home, you're like, man, I should have said that. I should have said that. I wish I would. I'll critique that. I'm like, man, I wish. That's what I like to do, but I should have cussed them out better. Damn it. Sure. That's funny.
You bring up some really good points. It's not that I'm never competitive. It's not that I never go, or I never get that moment of like, why did they get that? I'm better than them. Yeah. Also, you do not want to play board games with me.
I'd love to play board games.
I trash talk. I will lose my mind if I lose. But it's just about that thing of, sometimes, and especially in comedy, it's really easy to become bitter.
Is it?
Oh, people think it's like, oh, it's so fun. You're always joking around all the time. No, comedians are terrible people. it's a spectrum. Some are worse than others.
Yeah.
But it's really easy to fall into this. They're getting this and I'm not. I'm funnier than that person. Why am I not getting those opportunities? And when
I
you
can see that.
live in that mindset,
Yeah.
it only starts to hurt you.
Back to I don't want to go back into the mental health thing, but people think that comedians are funny and happy all the time.
No.
But come on, Robin Williams, there's so many that do deal with depression and this, that, and the other, and now Robin Williams was the extreme, one of the greatest, and he took himself out, and people confuse that. And I'm one of them. I used to be one of them, and I'm a little older. I kind of understand the world a little bit better now. But people think that not only comedians, that people, what you see on the outside is everything. I smile all the time. All right. When I'm outside, I'm always smiling. Hey, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. But sometimes I'm smiling, trying to plan your death. Yep. Don't let the smile fool you. I'm figuratively speaking, government, if you're listening. Anyway. But, sometimes, you're just being polite, but you want to punch a hole in somebody, So we're going to move on to the next one. That went dark.
Let me say this. When you think about it, comedians go on stage in front of a bunch of strangers and try and make them laugh. That alone shows how messed up they are.
I know, right?
Because honestly, it is the first time I went on, it's terrifying. People are terrifying. And trying to make them laugh, you always get that guy in the audience that thinks he's going to be funnier. So I'm going to yell stuff out and it's going to be funny. It's like, buddy, I've dealt with 1,000 of you.
Yeah.
Shut it.
Yeah.
And so it's no, comedians are all a little bit off.
You get that heckler, you're like, dude, you're part of the job. You don't even know it. I've been prepping for you. I've
literally, you're going to yell out literally the exact same things a guy that looked exactly like you yelled out yesterday.
The same show, probably the same scene.
Yeah.
All right. What advice would you give a young person that wanted to be a comedian? You already touched on it a little bit. Just do it, blah, blah, blah. But
sure.
Okay, let me change the question a little bit because we've been talking around this subject. What would you do for a person that's beat down? They bombed the first time. They bombed the second time. They're right on the verge of bump it. What advice would you have for that person?
Well, I think the question I have for that person, it depends. How did you get to comedy? Because for some people, it's been their lifelong dream. I didn't know I wanted to be a comedian.
Right.
It happened to me by accident.
Oh, real quick, Mona says, I absolutely love Allison's laugh. She reminds me of the Queen of Queen Booger. Booger, her name's Diane. She has a YouTube channel and she has this great laugh, and yours is really similar. So I just want to throw that out.
I don't know her. I'll check it out. Thank you. Some people do not care for my laugh, and so I appreciate that.
Oh, you're great. You're short of a cackle. As long as you ain't, I'm okay.
I'm close to a cackle, but I used to get really embarrassed about my laugh because people would comment on it all the time.
Right.
And then one day I just went, no, laughing is a joyous thing. And yeah, I'm loud, but
it's part of me.
I'm going to let my freak flag fly. That was hard to say. I don't think I admitted it.
Wait, hold on.
So I always appreciate it when someone enjoys it, because sometimes I get hate mail on the radio about it.
That's terrible. But anyway, you got the person beat down. They're about to quit. What advice would you give them?
So the question kind of is, why are they there? Because if this is your lifelong dream, if this is what you really want, then it's like, yeah, listen, you're going to fall a million times. And you're also going to change. Your voice as a comedian changes so much the longer you're in it, because it's one of the things you don't get better unless you do it. So you got to go and you got to eat it a bunch, and you're going to have to go up on stage all the time, and you will get there eventually. But if it's someone who's kind of trying it out on a lark, and this isn't what their actual dream is, it's like, okay, well, so you got to weigh out for yourself, because is the pain worth where you're trying to go with it? Because often there's people that come in and it's like, actors often go, I want to try comedy as like an additional skill set. Well, if your number one dream is being an actor and you've bid it a whole bunch of times on a stand-up stage, maybe stand-up just isn't for you.
Yeah.
Maybe try sketch, maybe try something else. But if this is your dream, yeah, it's gonna hurt real bad, but eventually you're gonna bomb less. Bombing is gonna hurt less, and that feels like a triumph. The first time you get off stage and you're like, oh, they hated me, and I'm not gonna cry. That is amazing.
Wow.
And so it's about evaluating what's right for you, because because if this is your big dream, you got to fall down 10 times, pick yourself up 11, right?
Yeah, as long as you get up that last time, you're still good.
But if we can kind of go back to the original question a little bit, one thing I would say to anybody who wants to get into comedy is when you start doing it, you've been around a while, all the older comedians or more experienced comedians are going to come and go, this is what you have to do. This is how you have to do it. This is what a real comedian is. This is when you're allowed to call yourself a comedian. This is what you have to do. And it's all a pile of crap.
Wow. Okay.
And so because there's a bunch of different kinds of comedy. There's a bunch of different kinds of shows. There's a bunch of different ways to do it.
Right.
So again, if it's your dream, right? And there's a certain thing you want to try, or there's a direction you want to go in, but then all these grizzled vets are going, that's not real comedy. Forget them. Yeah. Do your thing. Create something no one's ever done before.
Exactly. That's what the greats did. That's what all the greats did.
And the thing about comedy is, and we all got into it because it's not a real job and there's no rules. And yet all of a sudden, the second you're in it, everyone wants to go, here's the rules.
Here's the rules. I know, right? I know.
What?
I know. Before I get to the next question, this just came to me. This isn't even a question. It is a question. It's not one of the questions.
Ask it.
Great. You said your brother was one of the genius type of comedians.
Outside the box.
Okay. What I consider genius would be George Carlin, Dave Chappelle. Not the just crazy funny yak 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 smack yourself with the freaking the rubber mallet type of thing. I'm talking about guys who by the time you finished the show, not only did you laugh, but you walked away and you learned something. Is that the kind of comedian your brother is?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Nice.
He plays with the medium. He loves misdirection. He loves to make you think he's going in one place and going to another place.
Yeah.
And he's very funny.
Okay.
And so, that is the kind of stuff. It's people who play, because George Carlin was not your typical comedian.
Oh, no.
Though, I mean, Dave Chappelle is a genius, and part of his genius is he mixes the lowbrow with the highbrow.
See, but Dave Chappelle evolved. He started out with that crazy, just funny, in-your-face stuff.
Yeah.
And then by the time he got the Chappelle Show, he was doing some out-of-the-box things that you didn't even think they'd put on TV. Yeah. And then once that show went away and he disappeared and he came back all buff, he came back wise. Now his comedy is wise, and I really, really enjoy that. Dave and George Carlin was just wise.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of comedy that I enjoy more than. I mean, I love what's his name, the short dude.
There's a lot of short dudes.
I know, just a short black dude, almost the most famous one right now. I can't think of his name.
Kevin Hart.
Yeah, Kevin. I like his comedy, but his comedy's not wise. His comedy is quick and whippy.
Yes.
Does that make sense? He's quick and whippy. He tells the story, but then he goes back and he jumps back and then he spins it, blah, blah, which I really, really like. But George Carlin and Dave Chappelle are wise. They take you on a journey. They're talking about big ideas, right? And so I'm going to argue with you a little bit, because I think if you go back to For What It's Worth, and Dave's early stand-up specials, there is wisdom in there. It's less explicit in a way, right? Because he was younger. Yeah. He was younger, but he is addressing a lot of social issues. Yeah. And so you can see it in him back then. Yeah. And so I think it's the willingness to address, I don't want to say societal issues, because it's like a lot of comics do that. But complex issues. Yeah. Yeah. And so my brother is someone who loves the ridiculous, and often that's where it is, but he also layers in that stuff, right? Nice. This is, here's a thought process, and here's a situation that comes up around language. And I loved it. and all that kind of stuff. And then he also loves playing, right? And so if opportunities present itself with the audience, and I don't mean in terms of hecklers, I mean audiences often love interacting and answering questions. Yeah. And he's fast on his feet. Real quickly, if I can do a plug, if
anybody is.
I was going to ask you to plug him. What's his name? I want to see him. I want to talk. I want to meet him.
So his name is John Dore. If you're watching in Canada, he has a new show that is airing on CBC and CBC Gem. New episodes every Tuesday called Humor Resources. If you are in the US, you can on, I believe Comedy Central has a streaming site, right?
I believe they do.
He did a special for it's not a stand-up special, but he did a show, one episode for Comedy Central called Big Questions, Huge Answers with John
Dore.
Yeah.
I'm going to find him. I got to.
You listen, his IMDb page crushes mine. And go, I don't even care about Allison anymore. I just want John.
Look, you turning the knife. I don't even have an IMDb. Just way to put salt in the wound, Allison. Thank you so much. That's awesome. All right, thanks for that, guys. John Dore, guys, look him up, and tell him you heard about him from the R-BoP podcast. Mm-hmm. All right, what is your biggest regret in reference to comedy?
Wow.
I know, right? Yeah. I thought about these questions.
I think my biggest regret is that it took me so long to believe in myself in a way. I listened to all those people for a long time. It's to what the rules were about what I had to do.
Right.
I had imposter syndrome for most of my comedy career where I was like, how am I faking my way through this?
Okay.
And so I think, and there's also this feeling of, even when you do really well, of like, oh, I'm not that funny. I think not for everyone, obviously, but that was how I felt. And I wish that
you had little insecurity issues.
Oh, big time. And so yeah, big time. And so I wish that I had, kind of steeled myself a little bit more and blocked all that stuff out and just plowed ahead.
I understand.
Right? And in a way I did, because obviously I stayed in it and it all came. But I think self-doubt, we sabotage ourselves all the time by just doubting or going, what if, or, oh no, what if this happens?
Yeah.
Just do the thing. Just do the thing.
Yeah. Hell, I get overconfident. I'm the best guy in the world. I couldn't do that. Next question. I'm going to flip it on his head. What's your biggest triumph in comedy? The record label?
Yeah. I mean, interestingly enough, my biggest triumph in comedy isn't really about telling jokes, right? Mm-hmm. Which I did for so long. But creating the record label, which is immensely frustrating and so hard and yet so rewarding. And in the record label too, I have imposter syndrome all the time, and I just go, shut up, whatever, keep going, just keep going. Mm-hmm. And so I am getting better at that, pushing that stuff to the side. But I think even if it were to, for some reason, shut down tomorrow, I'm proud of myself.
That's what matters. But yeah. I can help you with that. If you ever start feeling that way, shoot me a message on Instant Messenger and you'll get right back. Girl, fuck it. You're good. So I will be your freaking conscience. Shoot me a message. Phil, I don't know if I can do it. I'll be like, expect those words. Girl, fuck it. You're good. Sorry for that, folks. If you didn't like that word, I don't care. Anyway, last question. We're going to wrap this up. If you were queen for a day, and you could do anything, what would you or could you do to improve things? Now, when I say across the board, it could be across the board personally, professionally, or, world peace. What would you do if you were king for a day to improve things? I'm going to for reals it again. I'm going to maybe get serious a little bit. All right. I would decriminalize all drugs. And all drugs? Yeah. And I would treat drug abuse as the public health issue it is. Okay. No, obviously not for the manufacturers, but decriminalize the use of all drugs because the system that is in place now is only punishing the wrong people. I agree.
and is not treating the, addiction is it's not a choice. And so the way we're dealing with it now, which is essentially punishment. If you're an addict and you're buying and you're using, you're going to get arrested, you're going to go to jail. Your life is essentially ruined now. Instead of, it's a public health issue. And if you look at countries, Portugal is the example everyone uses most recently. When you decriminalize the use and possession and you treat the addiction, you can honestly change the whole culture of your country. And you can, people, when they have a community to go back to, and when they have people who are helping them rebuild connections, that is the most successful way to treat addiction. So
I didn't think of it that way.
Well, because often when people have a sorry.
No, don't worry about it. We're good.
Me. So often when you have have an addiction, you lose your connections to society. And part of what brought you to that place is you don't feel like you have anything in your life to lose, because it starts with self-medicating 9% of the time.
Right.
And so you're medicating yourself against life and about trauma and what's going on.
I agree with that.
Worse and worse, and you go farther and farther down the hole, and now you're maybe committing criminal acts.
You've gone too far. It's just blown up outside of your control. Yeah.
And so when you treat it not as a criminal action, but as a public health issue, in that you have an illness in a sense, and you put people in, you give them support, you put them in rehabs, you help them rebuild connections to community, you make them feel a part of something, the relapse rate drops incredibly.
Okay.
And so, so that's what I would do.
I like that.
Write that in law, and then so that the next day when I'm not queen anymore, no one can change it.
Yeah.
And it'll make a huge difference in the world and community, right?
I agree. And I'm going to buy a shitload of weed. So. Marijuana is your friend. I don't smoke it, but I got stock. I ain't lying. I got stock options. I'm waiting for them to, man, if they ever decriminalize, take it off the bad boy list, the big bad boy list. Cha-ching. Hopefully.
It's gonna happen eventually. It's gonna happen.
Yeah. Mona, who is in New Zealand, by the way. I think that's right. Mona, are you in New Zealand? I think she's in New Zealand. She calls me Papa Phil. She says, at Papa Phil and Allison, you both did fabulous, great conversation and company. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Mona.
See, we had a good conversation. I think people learned some shit. That was great. We're going to wrap this up. Shucks, we've been off for an hour and 22 minutes. Time flies.
I never shut up.
No, this was great. We're good. What normally happens is we get off and then invite some folks in and they want to talk to you and everybody starts drinking and get all jacked up and blah, blah, blah. But I ain't gonna say what's in your glass. But anyway,
I don't drink, but I'm happy to chat for a bit if you want. But
okay, that's cool. I'm going to put I'm going to put it in the chat this time after I close out. No, I'm gonna put it in the chat now, and then if I recognize people, I'll bring them in, because sometimes this goes south. You put it in the chat, you get some hecklers, So, yeah, it happens. So I'm going to hit invite, copy. I'm putting it in the chat right now, folks, and then we're getting ready to close out. All right, so that's chat. That's the link, guys, if you guys want to come in here. Thanks, Allison, I appreciate it. This was a great conversation. We went in some crazy ways. Wasn't expecting to get into mental health, but I'm glad we did. Fantastic conversation, guys. You guys make sure you support her brother, John, I believe you said, John Dore.
John Dore, Jondore.
Y'all look up John Dore. Tell him that Allison and I freaking sent you. And once again, for my friend, make sure you guys go into the show notes or the description box, and you guys can find the link to Cool Walls and support that if you can. My name's Phil. I got Allison. I love you like cook food, guys. We're out of here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you hear somebody sneeze, run like a motherfucker, and I'll see you when I see you.